My name is Raymond Holbrook. I'm 45 years old. 3 months ago I was worth almost $7 million. I owned a successful plumbing supply company, I lived in a 6-bedroom colonial house, and both of my kids were away at college. People used to look at my life and say I was lucky. Maybe I believed that too. I thought I had built something solid, something that would last. But everything you think is permanent can disappear faster than you can blink. My ex-wife Veronica and her lawyer boyfriend Dennis took everything from me. I stood in the courthouse hallway that day watching the two of them with their arms around each other, laughing like this was all some private joke. You're pathetic, Veronica said, her voice sharp enough to slice through bone. Dennis just smirked and straightened his Italian suit like the world belonged to him. Nothing personal, Raymond, he said. Well, I guess maybe it is personal now. Their laughter echoed through those marble walls like a blade twisting in my chest. In one ruling, I lost my business, my house, every dollar I had saved, and even the relationship with my children. My twins, Mason and Sophia, believed her. Believed the lies. They said I was emotionally absent. Said I cared more about work than family. Maybe they were right in some ways. I did work day and night. But I did it for them. To give them everything I never had. None of that mattered in the end. So 3 months later, I was living in a tiny studio apartment that smelled like mildew and old carpet. My bank account showed $1,043. My meals were instant noodles and dollar store soup. The silence in that apartment was the kind that doesn't just surround you, it sinks into you. Buries you. And then one night, while digging through an old storage box, I remembered something. Something small. Something I had forgotten about for nearly my entire life. An old savings account my grandfather opened for me when I was born. Just $50 in it? Or so I thought. I didn't expect anything from that account. It was more of a memory than money. My grandfather, Eugene Holbrook, was a factory worker his whole life. He wasn't wealthy, not by any measure. He worked the same Chrysler assembly line for 40 years, came home with grease on his hands, wore the same work coat every winter. Growing up, I'd sit with him on his porch, listening to him whistle old country tunes. He used to give me $1 now and then and say, "Save half, spend half. Time makes money grow, Raymond." I was too young to understand what that meant. So when I remembered that account, it wasn't hope. It was resignation. I figured maybe there was $50 left in it, maybe $100 if I was lucky. Enough for a decent meal. Maybe a real cup of coffee. Something that didn't taste like cardboard and disappointment. The bank had changed names so many times over the years I wasn't even sure the account still existed. But I took the old, faded passbook, yellowed pages, ink barely readable, and walked into the nearest branch. The place looked nothing like the kind of bank my grandfather would have known. Everything was glass and metal and polished surfaces. The teller was a young woman named Patricia, bright smile, cheerful voice. I handed her the passbook. "I'd like to check on this account," I said. She scanned it. Typed. Stopped. Typed again. Her smile faded. She glanced at her screen, then at me. "One moment, sir. I need to get the branch manager." My stomach dropped. I thought maybe the account had been closed years ago. Maybe it was flagged. Maybe I owed something. I was ready for another loss. Another humiliation. The manager, Mr. Theodore Grayson, came out. A man in his 50s, calm and measured, like someone who had seen every kind of financial disaster a person could walk in with. Except, apparently, mine. "Mr. Holbrook," he said gently, almost cautiously, "I think we should discuss this in my office." And something in his voice, something uneasy but respectful, made the hair on my arms stand up. Whatever this was, it wasn't nothing. It was something big. Mr. Grayson led me down a quiet hallway to an office with mahogany furniture and framed certificates on the wall. He closed the door behind us, not with urgency, but with the kind of careful movement that tells you something serious is coming. "Please have a seat," he said. I sat, though I felt like I might fall right through the chair. He placed the passbook on his desk like it was something fragile. Something valuable. "Mr. Holbrook, this isn't a regular savings account," he began slowly, choosing every word with precision. "This is what was once known as a century growth account, offered for a very short time in 1960. They were designed to grow untouched for decades." I stared at him. "It was $50. "Yes," he nodded, "but it has been compounding at 7.5% annually, for over 60 years. My mind couldn't even process that at first. I just watched his lips move as he turned his computer screen toward me. The number on the display didn't look real. There were too many digits. I blinked 3 times, waiting for them to rearrange into something normal. 4,847,539.28. My breath caught in my throat. That's not possible, I whispered. It is, he said gently. And there's more. More? He opened a thin yellowed file. Inside were documents older than I was. In 1965, your grandfather instructed the bank to purchase $100 worth of shares in a small textile company transitioning into investments. He paused, watching me carefully. That company was Berkshire Hathaway. The room tilted. I gripped the armrest to steady myself. He bought 5 shares, Mr. Grayson continued. Those shares are now worth approximately $8.2 million. My vision blurred. I didn't know if I was going to laugh, cry, or collapse. Then he handed me an envelope with my name written in handwriting I hadn't seen since I was 10. My grandfather's handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a single page. For when life tries to break you. Grandpa Eugene. I exhaled, a sound somewhere between a sob and a prayer. Everything I had lost. Everything that had been taken from me. I suddenly realized, this story wasn't over. Not even close. My hands were trembling as I unfolded that letter. The paper was thin, yellowed at the edges, like it had been waiting a lifetime just to be touched again. The handwriting was steady, careful, the way older men write when they know every word matters. Raymond, if you are reading this, you have reached a moment in life where you need something solid to stand on. I don't know what happened. I don't know your troubles. But I do know this, life has storms. Every man faces them. Some storms break a man. Some teach him what he is made of. I had to stop reading for a second. My throat had closed up, tight as a fist. My father taught me to save what little I had. His father taught him. I am teaching you. Time is wealth. Not money. Time. And patience. The world will try to take everything from you, your pride, your name, your peace. They cannot take time, Raymond. Not unless you give it. There was no anger in his words. No bitterness. Just truth. Do not tell anyone about this money until you have healed from whatever has happened. Power held quietly is power protected. Trust slowly. Forgive carefully. And never show your whole hand. The world is full of men who smile as they sharpen their knives. I don't know how long I sat there in that office. Maybe minutes, maybe hours. Mr. Grayson didn't rush me. He just sat quietly like he understood this was not just about money. It was about blood. Legacy. A man's last message to his grandson across decades. When I finally spoke, my voice was rough. What happens now? Mr. Grayson leaned forward. Now you decide who you want to be. You have the means to start again. But more importantly, you have something very few people ever get. A second beginning. A second beginning. Not revenge. Not escape. A rebirth. But as I walked out of that bank, past the glass doors and the polished floors, one thought crystallized with perfect clarity. Veronica and Dennis had no idea what was coming. Not because I wanted to destroy them, but because they thought I was already destroyed. They were about to learn how wrong they were. I didn't change anything right away. I didn't upgrade my apartment. I didn't buy a new car. I didn't tell a single soul what I had just discovered. I walked out of that bank the same way I had walked in, worn shoes, tired eyes, quiet steps. If anyone saw me on the street, they would have thought I was just another man beaten down by life. And that was the point. I went back to my studio apartment that smelled like damp carpet and old paint. I sat on the edge of the mattress that doubled as my couch. The traffic outside hummed through the thin window. I took out the letter again and read it slowly, every line settling into me like stone. Power held quietly is power protected. Never show your whole hand. My grandfather had known. Somehow he had known life would hit me hard one day. He knew I'd love too big, work too hard, trust too blindly. He knew I would give everything to people who would take it all and ask for more. So I didn't call Veronica. I didn't call my kids. I didn't try to prove anything to anyone. Not yet. Instead, I got up the next morning and went to the warehouse job I had picked up just to survive. Minimum wage. Heavy lifting. The kind of work I did when I was 20 and desperate. The other guys didn't talk to me much. I was the old new guy. The one who kept to himself. I let them think that. I spent my lunch break sitting alone, scrolling through my phone, looking at old pictures of Mason and Sophia. Their first day of kindergarten. Birthday cakes. College acceptance letters. The smiles we used to share. They still believed their mother. They still believed I had abandoned them. Not because of what they saw, but because of what they were shown. And if I had learned anything in the last few months, it was this. The truth doesn't need to be shouted. It just needs time. And now, I had all the time in the world. 2 weeks passed. I lived exactly the same way, cheap meals, cheap coffee, the same warehouse shift, the same silence. But inside something was changing. I wasn't broken anymore. I was waiting. And waiting is powerful when you know what you're waiting for. Meanwhile, Veronica was living like she had already won the lottery of life. New jewelry, new handbags, brunches with women who loved gossip more than God. She thought she had married up when she slid into Dennis's arms. She thought she'd traded me in for a newer model. A man with power. A man with influence. A man who knew how to win. And she wasn't entirely wrong about him. He did know how to win. But he also knew how to cheat. And that was his downfall. Because when a man wins by cheating, he assumes everyone else is playing the same game. And that arrogance is blind. I contacted Arthur Blackstone, one of the most feared attorneys in New York. Not a divorce lawyer. Not a corporate lawyer. A predator who hunted the men who thought they were untouchable. Arthur didn't just know Dennis. He had trained him. When I walked into Arthur's office, top floor, glass walls, the kind of place where fortunes are made and destroyed, he didn't ask me how I was. He didn't ask me what happened. He simply asked, "Do you want to punish them or do you want to erase them?" I didn't speak for a long moment. Punishment is loud. Punishment is emotional. Punishment is messy. Erasing is clean. "I want the truth," I finally said. "And I want everyone to see it." Arthur smiled, a slow, sharp thing. "Good. Then we'll begin quietly." And just like that, everything that was taken from me, everything they thought they had gotten away with, was already shifting. Arthur's team began gathering documents. Contracts, court transcripts, phone logs, text history, financial transfers. They found the forensic accountant who testified against me, Dennis's cousin. They dug into Judge Brennan's finances. They tracked Veronica's credit card statements, membership purchases, hotel stays. And piece by piece the facade started to crack. They didn't know it yet, but I was already coming. It didn't take long for the cracks to turn into fractures. Arthur's investigators were relentless, cold, methodical, patient. They didn't show emotion, didn't speculate, didn't assume. They simply followed trails that Veronica and Dennis never imagined could be followed. Because when people think you're destroyed, they stop hiding. The first break came from Veronica's phone records. Thousands of text messages, late-night calls, hotel reservations charged under different names, but linked by the same device ID. She hadn't just been seeing Dennis for a few months. It had been over 3 years. And Dennis hadn't been her only affair. Then came the bank statements. Transfers between Veronica and Judge Brennan's personal assistant. Payments routed through a charitable fund that didn't actually exist. Restaurant receipts, vacation trips, spa retreats, charged to business accounts and written off as legal consultations. Dennis hadn't just influenced the court. He had bought it. And the judge had sold it. Arthur didn't rush. He didn't confront. He didn't make noise. He was a surgeon, cutting slowly, precisely, without letting the patient know they were bleeding out. Meanwhile, I went to work every morning like nothing had changed. I lifted heavy pallets. I swept concrete floors. I ate lunch alone. I kept my head down. The guys at the warehouse thought I was invisible. That invisibility was my armor. Because while they saw me as a defeated man, I was loading bullets one by one. The turning point came when Arthur looked up from a folder during one of our meetings and said, "We have enough." "Enough for what?" I asked. He leaned back, mouth curling into the sharpest smile I've ever seen. "For the FBI." I didn't speak. I didn't breathe. "We're not just overturning your divorce, Raymond," he continued. "We're not just reclaiming your assets. We're going to bring down Dennis, the judge, the accountant, and everyone who helped them. This isn't a lawsuit anymore." He closed the folder. "This is racketeering, fraud, and judicial corruption." For the first time in months, I felt something warm spread through my chest. Not anger. Not revenge. Justice. And it was coming. Quietly. I just had to wait a little longer. Within weeks, the divorce ruling was suspended. Every asset transfer, every bank withdrawal, every property deed Veronica had signed was placed under investigation. The life she had paraded around like a trophy began slipping through her fingers faster than she could grasp it. And the thing about people who build their identity on appearances is, they don't know how to survive when the appearance cracks. She and Dennis had believed they were untouchable. They had the judge. They had the accountant. They had a courtroom that was never really a courtroom, it was a stage. And I was meant to be the quiet loser in the back row. But now the stage lights had flipped. And the audience was watching them. Veronica tried calling the kids first. Tried to spin it. "Your father is doing something crazy. He's trying to ruin us." But Mason and Sophia weren't children anymore. They saw the news. They saw the arrest. They saw the lies unravel in real time. It was Sophia who reached out first. The phone rang while I was sitting on the edge of my bed eating soup out of the can. I almost didn't answer. I didn't know if I had the strength to hear their voices full of disappointment again. But I did. "Dad?" she whispered. Just that word. Soft. Broken. Familiar. I couldn't speak at first. I had pictured this moment 1,000 times, imagined what I would say, how I would explain, how I would defend myself. But none of that came out. Instead I said, "Hey, sophomore." She cried. Art. The kind of crying that comes from realizing you've been lied to, not by strangers, but by someone you loved. "Mom told us you abandoned us," she choked. She showed U.S. bank statements and letters. We thought. She couldn't finish. "I know," I said quietly. "And I'm not angry with you." Mason called later that night. His voice was steadier, but the apology sat heavy inside it like a stone. "We didn't know, Dad. We really didn't know." "I know," I repeated. "You were protecting the parent you thought needed protecting." We talked for hours. Not about money. Not about lawsuits. Not about betrayal. Just about us. A father. His son. His daughter. And the space between us slowly closing again. Rebuilding with my kids wasn't instant. It wasn't some dramatic movie moment where we hugged under rain and everything was fixed. Real healing is slower than that. It comes in pauses, in half-spoken truths, in the quiet moments where no one runs away anymore. Sophia came to see me first. She knocked on the door of my little studio apartment. No warning, no text, just showed up. I opened the door and she stood there, eyes red, hands in the sleeves of her sweatshirt like she used to do when she was 5 and nervous about something. She looked around the apartment. The peeling wallpaper. The small fridge. The mattress on the floor. The silence. "Dad," she said softly, "you lived like this? Alone?" I didn't try to make it sound noble. I didn't play the victim. I just nodded. She sat on the floor beside me. No furniture, no table, just concrete and carpet and whatever space we had between us. We talked for hours. Not about Veronica or Dennis. Just about life. About mistakes. About things we wished we could go back and do differently. Mason came a week later. He didn't cry. He didn't break. He was quiet, thoughtful, older than the last time I had looked at him. He didn't ask me to explain anything. He simply said, "I want to understand you better now." And that one sentence, the simplicity of it, felt like a door opening. Meanwhile, Veronica's world was collapsing. The house was seized. The business was placed under receivership. Her so-called friends, the brunch crowd, the charity gala women, vanished overnight. Wealth attracts people. But so does loss. Just a different kind. Dennis, trying to save himself, had cut a deal. He gave up every detail, every falsified signature, every manipulated statement, every meeting he and Veronica had planned behind my back. He didn't do it for justice. He did it to reduce his sentence. But truth doesn't care why it comes out. It just cares that it finally does. And with every exposed lie, every reversed judgment, every piece of the facade stripped away, I didn't feel triumph. I felt clarity. The kind of clarity you only earn when you lose everything, and survive anyway. When the case fully overturned, it didn't feel dramatic. There was no applause, no victorious music playing in the background. It was quiet. A few stamped documents. A judge's signature. A brief acknowledgement that the previous ruling had been influenced by corruption and was therefore nullified. Just like that, the business was mine again. The house was mine again. Every asset that had been taken was returned. But I didn't move back into that house. I walked through it once, just once. The rooms felt cold in a way I couldn't describe. Not temperature cold. Memory cold. The kind of cold that comes from realizing a place you thought was filled with love had actually been filled with something hollow. The kitchen Veronica remodeled 3 times. The bedroom where I once believed we shared our lives. The pool where my kids used to splash and scream and laugh. I stood in the living room looking at the sunlight on the hardwood floor and I felt nothing. Money gives comfort. But it cannot return meaning to a place where love has died. So I sold the house. And the business too. The buyers were a large construction group who knew the company well and respected the work I had put into it. They offered me $12 million, a fair price. I didn't negotiate. I didn't need to. Because my future wasn't in pipes and fittings anymore. It was in understanding what my grandfather had known all along. Value isn't in what you own. Value is in what you build inside yourself. I moved into a modest 3-bedroom home in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing fancy. Nothing loud. Just enough space to breathe and live and start again. The best part wasn't the house. It was the knock on the door. Mason and Sophia, standing there with suitcases, asking if they could stay for a while. Not because they needed money. Not because they needed a place. But because they wanted to be with me. To talk. To rebuild. To learn me again. We cooked dinner together that night. We laughed. We sat on the floor eating pasta because I hadn't bought a dining table yet. It was the happiest meal of my life. After everything settled, I kept thinking about my grandfather. A man who never made more than $15,000 a year. A man who never traveled far, never wore expensive clothes, never tried to impress anyone. Yet somehow he understood wealth better than people who spend their lives chasing it. What he left me wasn't just money, it was a lesson. A lesson carved out of patience, discipline, and quiet understanding. So I created something in his name. The Eugene Holbrook Foundation. Not some fancy charity where rich people donate to make themselves feel good. No, I wanted something real. Something useful. Something that would have made him proud. We started small. One room in a community center. A whiteboard. A handful of folding chairs. I taught people the same lesson my grandfather tried to teach me on a porch when I was too young to listen. Time grows money. Not luck. Not gambling. Not chasing shortcuts. Time. The first month, we helped 12 families open their first savings accounts. Some people walked in embarrassed, convinced they didn't know enough about money to ever get ahead. I told them the truth. You don't need to know everything. You just need to start. Word spread. More people came. Single parents. Factory workers. Retirees. College students drowning in debt. People who had been told their whole lives that wealth wasn't for them. That they weren't the type of person who gets ahead. I could see myself in every one of them. The ones who work quietly. The ones who sacrifice. The ones who hope, but don't say it out loud. Tommy, my brother, quit his job and came to help run the foundation. He had stayed away during the worst days of my life not because he didn't care, but because he had a family to feed and Veronica had controlled everything back then. I never blamed him. He hugged me the day he joined and said, "Thank you for letting me come back." We have helped hundreds of families now. We teach kids how compound interest works before they turn 18. We explain how to build credit without drowning in it. We show people their lives are not too small to grow into something bigger. Every time I stand at the front of that room, I feel it. My grandfather is still teaching. Just through me now. Veronica's life changed too, but not in the way she expected. When the assets were seized and the accounts frozen, she tried to hold on to the people she thought were her circle. But people who come for the luxury don't stay for the loss. The brunch friends, the charity gala women, the country club crowd, they scattered the second the spotlight turned cold. The house was gone. The luxury car was repossessed. The designer bags started showing up on resale sites under different usernames. And when Dennis flipped to save himself, every detail of their affair, every scheme, every manipulation was recorded in black and white. Veronica wasn't charged with anything that would put her in prison, but she was left with nothing. She moved in with her sister. Started working as a receptionist in a small dental clinic. The same type of job she had when we met. Life has a way of circling you back to who you really are. Not who you pretended to be. I'm not going to lie and say I felt good about it. But I didn't feel bad either. Some losses are simply justice landing where it belongs. Dennis, he wasn't so lucky. He lost his license, his reputation, his career. He was sentenced to federal prison. I didn't watch the sentencing. I didn't need to. Revenge is noisy, but truth is quiet. And truth had already done everything I could have ever imagined, and more. As for Judge Brennan, the man who sat above me and looked at me like I was dirt beneath his shoes, he got 5 years. And he lost his pension. Which, if you ask me, probably hurt him more than the prison sentence. Sometimes consequences don't come in the form of shackles. Sometimes they come in the form of a mirror. My kids asked me once, "Do you forgive Mom?" I thought about that for a long time. Forgiveness isn't saying what happened was okay. It's simply refusing to let it own you anymore. I don't hate her, I finally said. I just don't carry her with me. And in that moment I realized I was finally free. Life slowed down after that. Not in a boring way, just in a steady, peaceful way. The kind of quiet I hadn't felt in over 20 years. I woke up without a knot in my chest. I made coffee in a kitchen that didn't echo with tension. I opened windows and let sunlight in instead of walking out before dawn and coming home after dark. For the first time, I wasn't building something for survival. I was building something for meaning. Mason and Sophia stayed with me for a while. Not permanently. They were adults with their own lives and dreams. But they visited. They called. They included me. And that alone felt like winning the lottery twice. We'd cook dinner together. They'd help at the foundation. We talk about real things, the things families forget to talk about when they're too busy moving through life. One night, Mason asked, "Dad, if Grandpa hadn't opened that account, what do you think would have happened?" I thought about that for a long time. "I think I would have still found a way," I said. "But I don't think I would have understood who I really was. Losing everything stripped away every identity I thought defined me. The provider. The businessman. The husband. The man who believed success looked like a big house and a perfect Christmas card. When all of that burned away, I was forced to stand alone and figure out if I had anything left inside me worth rebuilding with. Turns out I did. Pain doesn't just break people. Sometimes it reveals them. Grandpa didn't leave me money. He left me time. Time that had been quietly working in the background of my life while I was too busy trying to prove myself to people who never deserved me. I keep his letter framed in my office now, right beside the old passbook. Both worn. Both priceless. And sometimes, late at night, I sit with it in my hands and imagine him there with me, calloused hands, warm eyes, that soft whistle of his. He didn't live to see who I became. But he's the reason I became him. I tell this story not because I want sympathy or admiration or applause. I tell it because life has a way of disguising its greatest gifts inside of its worst moments. When I lost everything, I thought the story was over. I thought I had reached the ending, the part where the lights go out and the credits roll. But endings are rarely endings. Sometimes they're open doors disguised as heartbreak. The betrayal nearly destroyed me. The loneliness nearly hollowed me out. And the silence in that studio apartment was louder than any argument, any courtroom speech, any slammed door. But that silence, it's where I found myself again. Not the man trying to prove his worth. Not the man trying to hold the world together alone. Just me. Simple. Human. Still breathing. And then came the letter. The account. The lesson that waited 60 years for me to be ready to understand it. You see, my grandfather wasn't wealthy. He wasn't powerful. He wasn't educated in finance or business. But he understood one thing. A man's real wealth is built quietly, patiently, and without applause. Veronica and Dennis believed in shortcuts. In taking instead of earning. In winning by stepping on others. They had everything for a moment. And then they had nothing. Because what is taken quickly is lost just as quickly. What is grown slowly lasts. Today I get to help others grow what they never believed they could have. Families who thought wealth was only for other people. Young adults who think they're already too far behind. Retired workers who believe it's too late. I get to look them in the eye and say, no, you're right on time. Because if a $50 deposit made by a factory worker in 1960 can become a fortune, then your small beginning means more than you think. And if you take nothing else from my story, take this. Be patient with your life. Do not rush your story. Never show your whole hand. And never underestimate what time can do with what little you have. Sometimes the biggest blessings come disguised as disasters. You just have to live long enough to see them bloom.